Museum is a place where time does not matter. Looking at the artifacts, we are experiencing the most vivid and exciting moments of history. The program Secrets of Museums on Kazakh TV channel. Railway transport plays an important role in the economy of Kazakhstan. It accounts for about 70% of the country's total freight turnover and 60% of passenger turnover. Kazakhstan has the most extensive network of railways among the CIS countries. Their total length is more than 15,000 kilometers. More than 1% of the total population of the country work in the railway industry, and this is 170,000 people. Transport and logistics centers, sea, port, air, railway, and road infrastructure are being developed in Kazakhstan. To achieve at the current stable position in the industry, it was necessary to go through a long and complicated path from the first narrow gauge lines to modern high-speed trains. From the first narrow gauge line, the first locomotive whistle announced the entry of Kazakhstan into the era of steam traction more than a century ago, at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries. The grandiose construction of the continent, the Trans-Siberian Railway, has not bypassed this region. Then 190 kilometers of this road were laid in the area of the city of Petropavlovsk in northern Kazakhstan. But the official starting point for the history of rail transport in Kazakhstan is deemed to be the opening of the first Trans-Kazakhstan Highway, Orenburg-Tashkent, in 1904. At that time, a record of 1,600 kilometers of railways were built. One of the last highways of Tsarist Russia has become a real masterpiece both in terms of technical equipment and agriculture of the stations. In 1999, in the city of Almaty, the Central Railway Transport Museum was opened. It is, in a way, a historical monument to the great era of large construction projects and innovators. The founder of the museum was an honorary rail worker, a veteran of the industry, Baysen Sharmakov. Together with like-minded people, Sharmakov did a great job of searching for exhibits. Rarities were collected all over the country. They were brought to the museum by colleagues, railway workers, people who dedicated all their life to their profession. Baysen Sharmakov urged them to transfer to the museum things that were dear to them, as a memory, practically family relics. Paintings, photos, models of the first locomotives, diesel locomotives, electric locomotives, tools and fittings, everything in this museum tells about the history of the construction of the railway in Kazakhstan, from the first days to our time. As enlightenment came to the steppe by the Great Silk Road at proper time, the same with the advent of the first rails, an industrial revolution came to the region. The favorite exposition of children and adults who come to the museum for excursions is a miniature railway. Reduced-scale models of all types of steam locomotives and stations are represented here. Children listen curiously to a story on the staff system, when in order to pass through a single-lane section, a locomotive driver had to get a key at a station that existed in a single copy. The bell, which announced the arrival or departure of a train, attracts the great interest as well. The Kazakh Railway gave the people not only the opportunity to move, but also to receive a specialty with further career growth. settlements and cities were built, branches of industry were born and developed, and social infrastructure was formed along the constructed lines. Many of these cities have become major centers of industry and trade. Astana, Aralsk, Kyzyl, Aktobe, Turkestan, and many others. In the pre-Soviet period, more than 2,500 kilometers of tracks were built in Kazakhstan. But the construction of the Turkestan-Siberian Railway was a landmark event for the development of railways. Engineers, foremen, concrete workers, steel erectors, signalmen, road handlers, and thousands of workers arrived from the largest industrial centers of the country, such as Moscow, Tambov, Kharkov, and Dnepropetrovsk, to help with construction. Thanks to the system of self-financing, people were motivated not only by slogans but also by good earnings. The construction provided itself with all the things needed. They had their forge, carpentry, and repair shops, apart from own sewing shops, hairdressing salons, and stores. The workers lived in dugouts, adobe huts, tents, and yurts. Food was prepared in large tanks. Locals from the villages brought them kumis and meat. The local people who managed to get to the construction site identified themselves as lucky. Indeed, the workers of Turksib were provided with bread and clothes so that could support their families. The rails were laid as follows. A charging car with sleepers drove up to the end of the track. Workers grabbed the sleepers and laid them on the mound. While they were leveling the sleepers, rails were delivered on the charging car. Rackers in pairs took up the rails and put them on the sleepers. All this manual work was performed by 8 rackers apace. The workers were carrying sleepers and rails almost running. At that, they were doing their right and left steps, always simultaneously keeping a pace. Less than 2.5 minutes was spent for a distance of 12 meters. The distance passed during the day was from 1.5 to 4 kilometers. Since the track laying was carried out from the both ends, the northern and southern teams constantly competed in the speed of passage. While construction was going on, by 1928, crawler excavators, narrow gauge diesel locomotives, overturning trolleys, dump trucks, mobile compressors, and perforators were purchased abroad for the railroad. Machines gradually supplanted manual labor. Turksib was built during 3 years, from 1927 to 1930. The length of the railroad tracks was almost 1,500 kilometers. On April the 21st, 8 months ahead of the schedule, the northern and southern sections of the route were joined at Aynabulak station. A silver spike was hammered at the place of the tracks joining. Cheers and hoots of locomotives were running down the steppe. All residents of Aynabulak came out to meet the heroes. People were hugging, congratulating each other, and could not hold back tears of joy. This road opened the way to the development of desert lands and contributed to the economic development of the Republic because it linked Kazakhstan and Siberia. With the development of Turksib, the indigenous population of Kazakhstan began to master all the railway professions. Many of the hard-working people, starting with simple workers and coaches, gradually climbed the career ladder. Despite the difficulties, work in the field of railways was considered as prestigious. Over time, railway workers were provided with housing, a good social package, and other privileges. Many families subsequently founded labor dynasties. During the Great Patriotic War, the railway network established in Kazakhstan rendered the strongest strategic support to the frontline soldiers. The road, built in the late 30s and early 40s, linked the oil fields of Emba and the Ural, and also improved the speed of delivery of the necessary materials to the front. New routes provided the delivery of Karaganda coal to the South Urals. But few people know that an event occurred on the Kazakhstani railway, which affected the outcome of the Second World War and the course of the history of all mankind. An assault rifle, which later became the most common small arms weapon in the world, fired its first shoots in metalwork shops at one of the stations called Matai. It was a legendary Kalashnikov assault rifle, AK-47. In 1941, Mikhail Kalashnikov, wounded at the front, was going to get the treatment to his small motherland, the Russian village of Kurya. But a combination of circumstances forced him to get out at Matai station in Kazakhstan. He found the depot where his working pass had once begun. Having seen that the depot still had good workshops, machines, and the necessary tools, Kalashnikov decided that he would not waste time and try to realize his idea of creating a simple and reliable machine gun. A depot chief provided the designer with everything necessary. Much had to be done almost on the floor and literally by intuition. But after 3 months of hard work, the first tests were carried out directly into the shop. But who knows where the Kalashnikov invention would have been and what routine of bureaucracy the settlement documentation would have sunk without the direct intervention of the secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party, Ahmedjan Kayshigulov. Having received a letter from Kalashnikov with a technical description of the weapon and the layout of the model, the party member used all his connections in order to help the designer to finalize his sample with the involvement of specialists from Moscow. Constant improvement of the machine gun and the protection provided by Kayshigulov helped Kalashnikov to create the perfect machine gun in 1947. And in 1949, the new machine gun was put into service of the Soviet Army, becoming one of the best types of post-war small arms that won worldwide recognition. Years later, having received the highest awards, being a general, Mikhail Kalashnikov recalled, "Kazakhstan has a special place in my heart. This is my second motherland, which became a springboard into a great life. The thorny path of my invention began from here, from Matai railway station." And by the way, the exhibit kept in the museum is the same bell that was given signals at Matai station. This bell first met Kalashnikov, who went out the train. The end of the war in 1945 gave a new impetus to the development of Kazakhstani railways. The Akmolinsk-Pavlodar line, built in 1953, created conditions for the rapid development of the Ekibastuz coal basin and adjacent regions. In the 1950s, traffic in northern Kazakhstan grew fourfold. The development of virgin lands was marked by the intensive construction of railways in the northern and central regions of the country. During the 1950s, the density of the railway network doubled. This led to the fact that in 1958 the country had the largest railway in the USSR Kazakh Railway. Its total length exceeded 11,000 kilometers. It united all the roads connecting Kazakhstan with Siberia, the Urals, the Volga region, Kyrgyzstan, and other republics of Central Asia. In 1958, steam locomotives were replaced by diesel locomotives. In the 1960s, a complete modernization of the railways of Kazakhstan began. In particular, in 1964, for the first time in Kazakhstan, a section of the railway between Tselinograd, currently Astana, and Karaganda was electrified. From that moment on, the electrification of the whole railway network of the country began. In the 70s and 80s, the construction of new stations and the reconstruction of dozens of old ones were actively continued. In 1986, one of the noteworthy facts of the history of Kazakhstani railway transport occurred. For the first time in the world, a train of 440 wagons with a total weight of 43,000 tons and a length of 6.5 kilometers was driven along the Tsalina railway. In the early 1990s, Kazakhstan began the transition to a market economy. Reforming of the railway network in 2000 was aimed at developing competition and attracting private investment. The economy of the country began to recover and the volume of transportation of goods and passengers by rail began to increase. A large-scale program for the construction of new railway lines was developed. The country was faced with the issue of the need to build railways that would meet the economic issues of the country. The era of construction of sovereign Kazakhstan has come. The economy of the country began to recover and the volume of transportation of goods and passengers by rail began to increase. Despite the economic difficulties, it was necessary to continue to develop the railway industry. Thanks to the state's support, 1,700 kilometers of railway lines were laid. Their commissioning gave a powerful impetus to the development of the regions. New plants were built for the production of locomotives, passenger cars, diesel locomotives, and electric locomotives. New railways were laid as well, along which cargo strategically important for the country was transported. Today, we transport oil and grain through the territory of our state, which gives the country good economic performance.
Хорошо влияет на экономику нашей страны.
The convenient geographical position of Astana turned it into the largest transport hub of the country. Trains to all regions of Kazakhstan leave from here. Today, when the whole world is looking for new models of interaction, an international project One Belt, One Way is being developed, in the center of which there is a high-speed railway in conjunction with sea routes. About 60 countries are involved in this project, covering 45% of the world's population. The geographical location of Kazakhstan, political stability, and high economic indicators allow it to become one of the most important participants of this project. The international project One Belt, One Way allows the member countries to take the path of innovative development, to intensify cooperation in the field of digital economy and nanotechnology, to build smart cities. The new super high-speed highway will make it possible to build the digital Silk Road of the 21st century. And this is not just a move from the point A to point B, but a cultural and humanitarian exchange that ensures respect between countries and people.